Come, all you moonshiners, if you want to hear about the kind of booze that they serve around here. Maybe back in 12 of them.
Why am I around here? Because I have the height necessary to hold this up. That's my
strength.
That's my function.
You know, but here's the thing. How many Egyptians you know are tall? None. Do you know why?
They have the sun beating down on them.
No, because they figured out leverage. That's why. Okay, they mastered leverage. It's amazing. So it's a fine Wednesday, isn't it?
It's wonderful, yeah. Beautiful.
God, okay, so you really think that smells good?
I don't think anything off.
You know, if there's ever a time you want COVID, it's standing right here. Yeah. You're like, nah. You know, I could lose my sense of smell, risking death, but yeah, that's great.
Actually, now it smells kind of good. This I like. It's the initial one I didn't like so much.
There's no difference.
Oh, there is.
Oh, okay, maybe. Yeah, I guess so.
I think at some point we get to what we call, sensory overload. You know, you smell so many different things.
Yeah.
Blueberry,
I mean, if you just stop drinking this blueberry stuff, then...
Dude, that blueberry stuff is way too good to stop.
It is actually.
It's really, yeah.
Ugh, switch it off.
Yuck.
Yeah. Why do you want that in there?
Too late.
That's the meat of it, man. What are you talking about?
Oh,
No.
God.
I don't know. I have no idea. There we go. All right, let me rinse this out real quick.
I want to kind of give you an idea of the setup that we have here, because this is phenomenal. We've got a 20-gallon still with a 5-inch column, and of course it goes across, and then we've got the condenser on this side, and we've got these cross tubes that operate as the reflux chamber, or for lack of better words, its own built-in deflagmator. Okay, so please don't get wrapped up around the terms deflagmator or reflux chamber is primarily the same thing. It just depends on which you feel more comfortable calling it. But what we did was, for the last 2 days, we ran this with the PID controller here. But the difference is that we've been able to adapt an additional connection at the top, where we have the sensor at the top of the column as opposed to having it in the kettle. And you know, we talked about that before, about, you know, when you run tracking the temperature in the kettle, it's like driving the car using the tachometer. You know, you really don't know what's going on at the head, but you know what's going on down here. And what we found was you can run it like that, but based on experience, we found that at about 190 degrees is when we started to produce product. And we ran that up to about 204 in the kettle. But what we were not able to determine is we weren't able to balance a temperature at the head, because we never knew exactly what the temperature was, because we were always tracking the temperature from the bottom. So today we're going to run this, and coincidentally enough, we now have the probe at the top, which is going to be an added benefit to give us a little bit more precise control. So you stay tuned and we'll show you how this works. Hey, I'm here with Kevin, and we wanted to show you this because, you know, we go through the challenge of cooling the condenser. You know, what makes the liquor come out is, of course, you know, you vaporize it, but then you got to cool it, right? And well, the challenge in the beginning is, like I always said, was, man, I got to go through 90 pounds of ice to run this thing, because, and you don't have to get it super cool. You just got to get it cooler than the vaporization temperature. So he has fashioned. It's better if you explain it. What do you got here?
So what I ended up buying was, I went on, I think it was Facebook Marketplace, and I found a portable AC unit. That was, I think it was like $100 used. It wasn't expensive. And what I did was I took the condensing coil out, and I carefully bent it, and I used L-angles to essentially immerse that into a sink, keeping the heat exchanger obviously out of this thing. And then when we're running the condensing column, we created kind of a little bit of a fan that runs over the coils themselves, and yeah, it cools it down. And we kept I actually added a thermocoupler to measure water temperature, and then also the condensing coil temperature.
Oh, that's amazing.
And then from there, we set a temperature and we kind of walk away. It does everything it's supposed to do.
Necessity is the mother of invention, and this is yet another one of those problem-solving aspects that you had to go through. So, and we get to start running this, we'll give you a close-up and show you how he's got actually the water that runs back across the evaporator coil, which keeps this water like super chilled. No longer, no need for 90 pounds of ice.
So I think necessity is a great term. Laziness is another good one. You know, 'cause hauling 90 bags of freaking ice down here was like, no. So,
Business as such. Kevin being in the contracting business, I'm in the medical business, and so a lot of reading, a lot of watching YouTube videos, etc., etc. went into that, and we came very early on, came across George. And George, he's standing behind the camera. Thank you again for coming out and actually doing this with us, because this is highly valuable, invaluable in fact, and it's giving us a lot of pointers, a lot of ideas, a lot of going into the details that we before had not considered, and it's extremely great. So the idea is to start a distillery, and we had the space here in the bottom of a house. So we first of all bought a still, of course, and then got all these other paraphernalias. Behind me you see these fermentation vats bubbling away. We've got something brewing there at the moment. And so we're learning the art of distilling. And it truly is an art form. There are a lot of nuances to this that go into it. You know, some people like a little more of this, a little more of that. It's kind of like cooking or painting a nice relief of something or other. It is just, quite frankly, a beautiful thing when you see the finished product. And
I do. I can
I just smell alcohol. I don't smell like I don't have a, there's no profile that's building in my nose.
No, I can smell the air. I can smell the.
Microphone, check 1, 2. We do this. Are we gonna do this whole like clap thing? Ready?
Check,
3, 2, 1.
Boom. I got it.
So we get to ask you questions now, right?
Sure.
All right. So we're gonna go to what the band is always ask. Like Joan from Arkansas wants to know if you're happily married, you know, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Hey, oh, by the way, we've got a raccoon that showed up this morning. And, oh, yeah, oh, by the way, just look here. Here's a photo of him, because I'll put that video up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, here's a short video of him as he was walking away.
Oh my God, he's so drunk.
Yeah, look at him.
He can hardly walk.
Hey, buddy.
And he came back for more. Did you see that?
He came back for more. It won't take him long.
Hey, buddy.
He can't climb anymore. He's too drunk. He's been nibbling on our mash that we left outside, and now he's walking. First of all, he was just kind of stumbling. Now he's walking sideways, back and forth. It's fascinating. I think he's drunk. Yeah. He's hammered. Yeah.
I'm smelling too many fumes.
Yeah, I'm smelling a lot of fumes.
I think something's going on out there.
There's an easy way.
It's prohibition. Oh, it's doing all right. It's just catching up.
If we had a hydrometer sitting in there,
Oh my goodness, it would be so much
the-
easier.
It'd be in 1,000 pieces right now bouncing around, okay? I'm just
Yeah.
pointing that
yeah,
out.
what would happen is we would actually know what's coming out, like what
Yeah.
kind of alcoholic content,
Yeah, we would.
and the
we would-
bubbling would be less.
Is this typical for when you shut down a still and have to ring a button? Okay, all right.
Yeah. Oh, you got a lot of temperature differentials going
Right,
on, and
it's
vapor
building
locks,
pressure.
and it's pushing, and it's building up pressure, and it's shooting it out. Yeah. Yeah, we're like at 192 or 3 or something like that in the. See, starting to settle out. Just give it time.
So patience is a virtue?
Patience is a virtue. Yeah. Yeah. So the whole idea was, it's like the method. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, we got a lot of gurgling going on right now, and really, I think we caused that. I'm gonna go out on a limb. You know, we turned it off because we had a leak, and we weren't leaking liquid as much as we were leaking vapor. And it came in, and what, Andres, you said you're getting drunk by just breathing in the.
I like the smell,
Yeah.
which is wonderful. It's coming from obviously above the gin basket because
Right.
it smelled very infused, very nice, very everything.
Yeah.
I was getting a little happy. I didn't know why. I'm a happy guy anyway, but
Yeah,
something was happening.
Brother, so we actually shut it down and just had to open the clamps up and try to reseat, seals and everything to get it just right, and turned it back on. And when you do that, of course, you have this. So what happens when you turn the heater off? You start to lose temperature, and the top cools quicker. So you have this temperature. I don't want to call it a temperature inversion as much as it is a temperature differential. That when you turn it back on, it has to start to make up. So what do you wind up with? Well, you wind up with vapor locks and gurgling and whatnot. So what you do is you turn the temperature, and we did. We turned it down to 140. Yeah, it's time to turn it up because right now we're at 139. Yeah, but we're at 140 now at the head temperature.
Right.
So
We could have
what
prevented
we're trying to do is balance.
If we took the parrot off and cleared the parrot out, then we could have prevented the gurgling and spit out the.
Yeah, because it's causing a lock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Caused a lock. If we cleared that out, then there would have been no lock.
Right. This is our local raccoon we now have nicknamed Bob, who has had a whole bunch of that mash. You see him moving around. We think he's intoxicated.
So the one thing that I want to say is that we now have the PID temperature probe in a different spot. We had it down here, barely above the waterline. Didn't really do so well there. And actually, no, we had it like in the fluid. Not this is above the waterline, in the fluid. So that really didn't tell us anything about what's happening up there with the temperature. So today we got the two new pieces, this one and this one. So the still is actually a little taller than it used to be. We do have a ladder for Kevin, so all is well. And
always have a tall business partner. Always.
Always. and the temperature probe is actually going into this piece now in the back of it, which means that we now have a very good idea of what the temperature is up there, the temperature of the steam. And this access port up front is actually going to house another temperature probe when we do get it, or a thermometer rather. Today we used it to refill some juniper berries because we filled a gin basket with juniper, pepper, and what was the cardamom. And we went a little bit overboard with pepper, which, and we were able to taste it actually. It's not bad. Some temperature of about 173, 174. We have a fairly steady stream. So that, for this still, at least seems to be the sweet spot. We didn't know that before because we were measuring the temperature of the fluid. Make sure you label that as being
That's number 6.
juniper.
Whoa, okay.
And I can tell you that this is very flavorful. And this is actually the first gin that we have made. And that makes me very, very excited because so far we've made quite a bit of alcohol, but all of it.
We drank quite a bit of alcohol
We
too.
drank somewhat too, but
Yeah.
we had to flavor it ourselves
True.
afterwards, after the fact. So this is actually coming out flavored, and that for us is a first. Excited.
Oh, this is exciting. This is exciting. It's sort of like taking. It's like taking. Not you don't call them baby steps, but you go, okay. Oh man, I got this. I understand all this. The process. Okay, let's add one more step to it.
Right.
Right. And then you get that. You're like, oh wow. Now that it puts it all together, it really makes sense. You go, okay. Here's one more aspect that we need to understand. Now we can also do this. And then as you start it's like a building block process. But if you start, and I think a lot of people make the mistake. They go, oh, I want to make Jack Daniels. And that's their only goal, but they never start with the first building block of just let's get a mash going, let's learn how to make the cuts, let's learn how to get the process going properly. You start if you're looking for that end goal at the very beginning, it's more likely than not that you're going to fail.
It's true. So we have the theory,
Right.
and we've all read the manuals, the books, whatever, watched the videos, but actually doing this ourselves. adds just that component experience to it that we didn't have before, and I think
Gives you that level of confidence.
right, and starting slow, just making alcohol and going, this is great, except basically what we made was rubbing alcohol at the first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's a great cleaner. It was awesome,
we still
actually.
drank it, but yeah. but this is now actually becoming much more refined, and I like it. I really like it.
This kind of opens the world up
Yeah.
to you, because you realize now that even at this level, you're like, man, the world's my oyster. I mean, it opens up so many possibilities, and I'm only limited to my imagination.
Yes.
As long as we don't violate, that three-legged stool principle. As long as we don't violate the principles, our techniques are totally up to us. They're personality driven. I thought it was
important to kind of give you a pictorial layout of what this still looked like originally, because Kevin and Andreas had to make some modifications. Now, going into this right up front, please don't misunderstand. I and no one else should ever say that is wrong. There are some finer points of each still being personality driven, but there are some things that you should be aware of in its functionality. All right, so this is a 20-gallon still with a 5-inch column. Now, Andreas and Kevin were able to move a massive amount of vapor through that column, which was a benefit, because the benefit of that is your output flow increases proportionately with the size of your column. So it kind of made it run a little bit faster. But you'll notice here, see, these are just two support brackets, okay? So these don't play a role in this at all. But we had a stainless steel tri-clamps that connected everything together, with the exception of this portion to here. This was all one piece that was all soldered together. This made it a little bulky, a little difficult at times to kind of maneuver and move around, because remember, we're talking about a pretty substantial size column, so removing it to clean became problematic. Easy to overcome, but it was problematic. The reflux chamber was designed with these through pipes, and these were copper, so you had water going in here, and it would go through these through pipes as a pre-condensing chamber, and then it came out and it went into the bottom of the condenser, and then came out the condenser on this side. So, I mean, right off the bat, when you look at this, for those who have been following along for a long time in a lot of these videos, what do you think the first problem, the first challenge that occurs with a setup in this fashion? Yeah, it's actually impossible to control your reflux chamber itself, because there's no way to control it. Water flow goes in, goes through the pipes, goes down, goes through the condenser, and goes out. You see, the problem that's inherent with that is that which temperature are you balancing? If you get the reflux chamber too cold, well, then nothing goes through the condenser. So if you turn down the flow and the reflux chamber gets warm, well, then what happens is the water that's running through here gets so warm in the condenser, it may not condense. And so you're now producing steam. So there's that really difficult balance to find, and that's why we always recommend that you separate the two systems. Okay? Separate the two systems completely. You can run your water through your condenser at full force without ever having to worry about it, as long as it's effective enough to condense. It doesn't need any control. Whereas through your reflux chamber, an adjustment in the flow rate based on the temperature of the water going through that will have a drastic effect on your production, and whether you're actually refluxing or doing absolutely nothing, which would be to run it as a pot still. Okay, so what Kevin had to do, he and Andreas got together. They tried this a couple times. They were having challenges with it, and through via email and phone calls and so. What he did was he split this pipe here, so that now he had water flow that came from his chiller, and it ran full force through his condenser. That gave him the separated condenser, and then he also ran another line. Oh, this one, it was amazing, because it went up like to the ceiling and across the room, and back into the container. And in this one, he was running his water in here, and it was coming out of the reflux chamber, and it was running right back into the chilled water to be re-chilled to run again. But he had a valve right here that he could control the flow. Yep. No, as a matter of fact, he had this line that ran across, and there was a valve here so he could control the flow of the water that was going into the reflux chamber, and then it just ran back out. So that was the first hurdle that they had to overcome. You know, I wish you would understand how refreshing this can be when you have, you've got two gentlemen who are interested in the basis of the hobby, but you know, you have, as Kevin calls himself, the problem solver, but then of course Andreas is the technical expert. So I mean, this blend of problem solving and a technical understanding of what's going on is like almost like the perfect marriage. And you know, we talk a lot of times about the perfect marriage of art, science, and skill, you know, and that's really what it boils down to if you're going to make a quality product. But when you've got someone who's interested in not only the history but the process and the technicalities, and then how to overcome some of the issues that just arise through the middle of, I mean, what's the difference between a 7-gallon and a 14-gallon mash? Well, really, what's the difference between 7 and 14? But when you start to consider, as they have found out, you know, the differences in volume and trying to control that volume, you know, that's where Kevin rises and shines, because he's the problem solver. So this has been an extremely enjoyable walk. Part of it through memory lane, but a lot of it is also a learning process for myself as well. I mean, you can see we've got these fermenters going, and it's probably about 72 degrees in here, maybe even a little bit cooler, but these things are going badass crazy. And this is the corn mash that we did yesterday with some Cairo syrup, better known as the Saddleman's Cut. Hint, hint. You know, everybody's looking for it. There it is. Yeah, we did that yesterday, and I think I'm extremely impressed. Glad to be here. And again, I'm almost a fly on the wall. A couple more drinks, and